decades, psychologists relied on memory to understand emotion. You asked someone how they felt last week or last year and trusted their answer. But what if we could do better? What if we could track emotion as it happens in the real world 5 times a day using the one thing we never leave behind? In this segment, we explore how one lab is changing what it means to study human emotion by replacing the lab with your phone. Dr. Karin Coifman, a clinical psychologist at Kent State, is using a method called experience sampling to build some of the most detailed, real-time emotional data ever collected. Traditional psychology happened in clinics and research labs. Patients would recall how they felt days or even months after the fact. But emotion, like weather, shifts fast, and memory, it lies.
So in my work, over the last 20 years, I do a lot of what's called experience sampling research, where, it used to be that we would do this not using smartphones, because 20 years ago there were no smartphones, right? But we used to use other technological devices. But now we use it with like a smartphone app that's designed for research, and our participant in the study downloads the app, and we set it up that the app is going to trigger them to answer some questions, typically 5 times a day at some semi-random interval. And we can ask about all kinds of their experience as they're living it. And in a traditional perspective, you would be very interested in social interactions. In fact, my work has looked at that quite a bit. And so we might ask a person, like, who's around you? What are they doing? How many of them are doing the same thing as you? How do you feel in relation to them? Or we could ask them, if you're not around anybody, think of somebody you're close to. Tell us how you're feeling. These are common questions we've been using for a long, long time, right? So now we can take that framework for evaluating social interactions in day-to-day life in the 3D world, right, with other humans, and we can kind of transform those questions a little bit to ask about technology use. So for example, in the student life study, we're actually doing this where we ask students about who's around them in real life, but then we also ask them about how they've interacted with technology.
This kind of tracking doesn't just ask how someone feels. It looks at why. Are they interacting in real life? Are they scrolling Instagram? Are they happy or just distracted?
And in fact, ask them questions about, did you feel connected to people on technology? Did you feel isolated? How did you feel about yourself? And so we can just transform those questions just a little bit to go into this new domain. And it might work. It also might not work great. But the good news is that we have lots of tools to evaluate our measurement to see that they have utility. And this is actually how, particularly in the social and the behavioral sciences, this is how we learn new things. We kind of try to ask a question in a new way or in a new context, and you gradually build on one piece of knowledge to the next and to the next and to the next. So far, I can tell you that we've already been able to pick apart some really, really interesting things. So for example, we've found in the student life study that irrespective of whether or not the person feels like their social interactions on technology were positive or negative, right? That generally more technology use is associated with more psychological symptoms. It doesn't matter whether they're positive or negative. But interestingly, if they viewed their interactions on social media as negative, that is the only thing that disrupts sleep that night, right? But positive interactions don't. So that's a fascinating difference, right? That we wouldn't have known before. And, we're working to really understand that finding to see, how robust is it? How reliable is it? Can we replicate that? And then to really understand, well, what the heck is going on? Is it that feeling negative in the context of social media just makes you feel bad? And then that's why you don't sleep as well. And then if you feel good, that kind of compensates for the technology use interfering with sleep in some way. And we don't know that yet, but that would be the next thing that we would want to understand.
The finding was subtle, but powerful. It wasn't just what students did with their phones. It was how they felt about it. That emotional interpretation, whether a digital interaction left them feeling closer or lonelier, had real consequences. As the data grows, patterns emerge. And those patterns tell stories about loneliness, about connection, about the invisible costs of always being online. What Coifman and her team are discovering is that the virtual world doesn't just reflect our mood, it shapes it.
So what I would say is the simplest way to think about it is this. Humans are an incredibly social species. So connecting with other humans is a thing that is essential for our health. It's essential for our survival. And we evolved to be this way. In the last 20 years, there is this new dimension of social interaction that now exists, right? On technology, a virtual dimension of social interaction. And it's really unclear whether or not that can fulfill our same social needs, even though it is directly impacting them, right? So the more time you spend virtually connecting, the less time you spend connecting in the 3D world, right? And so there's probably good things and bad things, right? So for individuals who maybe struggle more to connect in real life and can find connection virtually, you could see that that might be protective, and all of the benefits that interacting with others, which there are numerous benefits for humans and actually any social species, right? That those benefits could be kind of compensate those costs from not doing it in real life could be compensated for in technology. But that's probably not going to be true all of the time, because there's also other ways where we interact with each other through technology that is kind of inconsistent with how we evolve to interact. So, for example, having access to information about other people all of the time, 24 hours a day without break is probably not great, right? Probably not great for most people, because it can facilitate different kinds of tendencies towards how you view yourself in relation to others, right? That could be problematic, making you feel worse than you would if you were just interacting in real life because you're interacting through technology, right? So those are just two examples, but the reality is we don't actually know that in the last 2 decades we have this third dimension, this like other dimension of social interaction, and we don't know how that really works.
We use our phones to manage our lives, but what if they could help us understand them? Experience sampling won't solve loneliness or anxiety, but it gives us something we've never had before: a mirror, a map, a trail of feelings made visible. It's not about making emotions perfect. It's about making them knowable. And maybe, just maybe, that's where healing starts.